Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Airport Fiction Podcast. My name is Nina.
I'm Emmy.
And this week, we're going to be talking about ACOTAR and enemies to lovers and the kink analogy.
Yes.
The way that we're splitting this up is we're going to go by popular series, and in each one, we're going to be talking about a particular trope. Fun thing I learned recently. I watched a video essay recently on like all of the different tropes that come about in Romantasy series or in romance. Enemies to lovers is the one we're going to be talking about today because it's like by far the most popular. But okay, so for some reason in the modern marketplace of romance literature, hockey teams is like the big shit. Like everything is about a hockey team, a hockey player, falling in love with a hockey player, whatever. And so my friend had like a cousin that was choosing colleges, and she came like this close to going to giving up her like best option and her number one pick because they didn't have a hockey team.
Whoa.
And so I wonder how
why?
I don't know.
Why?
I don't know why in particular hockey.
I was thinking like maybe romance, maybe there are a lot of Canadian romance authors. For lack of a better explanation. Man, what a crazy world.
I know.
That is so weird.
Yeah.
How many plots can you come up with?
Apparently a lot. Oh
Is
my
there
God.
a Mighty Ducks romance novel?
I don't get that reference.
That's really very unfortunate for you. Mighty Ducks.
There
Great
is,
movie.
I need to send this to you because you're not on TikTok, but there's a new series where this woman is like reading hot book talk romances in particular, and book talk is like the craziest of the crazies, and like explaining the plots to her husband. Would you like to hear one?
Yes.
It's something, the title is something Milk Farm. And so it is a world in which Minotaurs exist. And there is this young woman who is recently graduated from college. She can't find a job. But Minotaurs are around, and they found that, what's like the least offensive term for cum? Like spunk? I feel like that's worse.
That's so much worse. Went straight to spunk. Whoa. Like jizz is better than spunk. Spunk is rough. Spunk is bad.
So
I feel like cum is probably the best.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
unless you're gonna go like real medical and go semen. But I don't
yeah.
know which cum we're talking about.
Well, this book apparently does take a rather medical bent. So these God damn it. This I don't like saying it. The cum of the Minotaurs.
You don't like saying semen?
I don't
Say it.
semen. The semen of the Minotaur. I love that we're teachers and this is going to be available online.
I did not think about that. Although,
This is
let's
what I'm
be honest,
constantly
I
thinking
talk
about.
pretty similarly to my students.
I mean, yeah. As you should. So getting back to the Minotaur semen.
Yes.
So the Minotaur semen has like medicinal properties that once harvested, it can be extracted into medicine that like helps cure erectile dysfunction for human men. So there are these milk farms where Minotaurs come in to basically like, it's basically like a sperm bank.
Why would they call it a milk farm, though?
I wish they didn't.
Because that makes you think of like milking a cow.
Well, I think that is kind of the vibe, because this woman begins her employment at this milk farm, and she's like wears scrubs and whatever. But even though it's like very, it's supposed to be like very professionally medical. Like they have these, you know how they like milk cows by putting like the hoses on their udders and whatever.
I did not know that.
It's like mechanical milking, whatever.
That's rough. Okay.
But this woman, for some reason, you can't just hook it up to the mechanical milker. You have to like jerk the Minotaur off first, obviously, because what else would we do in a Romantasy book? Anyway, this Minotaur comes in, she like jerks him off a bunch, and he comes in every week to like do good for the community or whatever. And apparently the amount that they collect is like 24 ounces, which is like more than this whole thing. Whatever. Anyway, as the book progresses, she falls in love with the Minotaur, obviously, and they like get married or whatever. But then at the end, she gets a job, which was her like B goal, but at the end she decides to work part-time at the milk farm just because she enjoys the work so much.
I don't even know how to respond to this, that this exists.
Okay, I've been realizing,
but the good for the community is that men won't get erectile dysfunction because it's not like they're curing cancer with the. How do they have sex? How do you have sex with a Minotaur?
I don't know.
It seems logistically challenging.
Hooves. Well, there's this other one that she was talking about where instead of a Minotaur as the like titular beast, it's a basilisk. But the basilisks like turn into men, and so they can't kill you when they look at you. But then the whole plot of that is like the basilisk has to like teach her how to have sex so that she can woo the prince. But then she wants the basilisk instead. But then to marry the basilisk, because they're different species, they have to go through this ritual where she like publicly has sex with his dad. Like,
whoa.
Okay, I actually felt like this was like important to bring up a little bit, because I feel like when we say romantasy, like this is the kind of stuff that people think about, because as we were talking about last week, like the genre is so big that so much like slop, and a lot of it I do think is written by AI. A lot of like crazy shit is just like coming out of the woodworks and like getting like read because the genre is hot. And so I do think that a lot of the books that we're going to be talking about are like the most popular ones that I think are like at least a little bit better written, are a little bit better thought out. They have like world building and like characters and stuff, and they're not just about like jerking off minotaurs.
Right. I'm curious. No, I'm not going to read that. I'm like a little curious though. I mostly just want to meet the person to understand how this came out of your brain.
Yeah.
That also like actively sounds not hot at all.
No.
Like they fall in love at a milk farm. And also the title, it feels like I'm being punked.
I am very interested, like, who are the people that are... Because what I've heard, and this might just be like totally not true, but what I've heard is that a lot of like women who are like homemakers or stay-at-home wives or moms are the ones that write a lot of romance novels, because they're the ones that like, especially if their kids are older, like have the time. And then on the other side of that, it's like PhD students or like academics, because they also have time, because it's like built into the like coursework or whatever.
Right.
We're immediately off topic, but enemies to lovers.
It's good to know what is out there in the genre. I'm curious about the basilisk one until the sex with the dad. That turned me off a little bit.
Well, I also think that it's, I don't know. I don't want to do the thing where I'm like infected with the shame, because like all of this is just like kink erotica, and we're going to be talking about kink today. I think that it's like, it's not advertised as being like kink erotica necessarily. I think, you know, there's something to be said for like, I think that a lot of people that read these are like older women, and there's something to be said about like this population of people whose sexuality isn't taken seriously, like getting something that is like for them. My first ever, I've told you this before, but my first ever paid writing gig was writing erotica for this site that was trying to be like feminist like porn, because they're like video porn is exploitative. Which
Either way.
Exploitative. And so like let's instead like do like stories and shit.
Yeah.
Whatever. Anyway.
I read a lot of erotic like stuff online.
Oh, that's what I was gonna say, is like I don't think that I'm defending that type of, I don't know. I feel like those things maybe have less of the tropey literary patterns that we are going to be dissecting in our romantasy.
Or maybe like the opposite. Like they're all trope and no like nothing to dissect beneath the tropes. They're just trope layered on trope layered on trope that's not actually doing anything.
Hungry for the tropes.
Yeah. Like, I'm sure they all have barriers. Like
barriers?
Like we will be talking today.
Oh, hell yeah.
About the barrier, which is a romance, an element common in, or like essential to the romance novel.
Okay.
Which is pretty much like, what is the obstacle that stops the lovers from getting together?
Yes.
And like the plot of the book is overcoming the barrier.
Right.
And I'm sure there is some reason why the Minotaur and the milker lady can't get together. And
it's like medical malpractice or something.
There is a reason why. Well, and to get with the basilisk, she's got to go through the ceremony and overcome that barrier.
And if he turns into a snake in front of her, she'll like die.
Yeah, I'm glad that it's not sex with the snake. That's what I thought it was. I thought it was going to be some sort of like tentacle porn sort of deal.
I think it probably gets there. I also forgot the most, I don't know if it's the most disturbing, but one of the other disturbing things that happens is that they have to like, to consummate their mating or whatever, which is another trope that we're going to be talking about in detail, the like mates and heart and soulmates or whatever. But to consummate that, they have to have sex for 6 hours straight. They got to time it. And he's so powerful that he repeatedly breaks her pelvis. But then because he's a magical snake, he has healing powers. And so he repeatedly breaks and heals her pelvis, which, like, I don't know what is, like, that's so explicitly, like, torture porn. It's, like, it's as kinky as can be.
Yeah.
And it's strange that it's, yeah.
Well, and like you said, there is something, like, kind of awesome about all of the kinks finding their place in the sun. I guess there are limits, like... Yeah, there would be certain sexual desires that I do not want to see the light of the sun.
Yes.
That cross a line.
Yes.
But for the most part, like, let's defeat the kink shaming, you know?
Yeah. It's like, it's all by and for women explicitly. Like, these books are about men, which is, again, like a main thing we're going to be talking about, but there's no men involved. It's like using masculinity as a tool created by women for the gratification of other women.
Yeah.
And then, like, by that, we get to understand, like, what is a woman's version of, like, ideal masculinity. So enemies to lovers is probably the most common and far-reaching back into history trope that we can find in the romance genre. One of the most famous ones, Darcy and Elizabeth. Me and Noah started watching the 1995 miniseries last night. So good. So this is one of the hallmarks of the ACOTAR, or A Court of Thorns and a Roses series, which interestingly has like a kind of convoluted way in which it approaches the enemies to lovers, because I do think maybe in an uncharismatic way that it was just her like milking this
Why? Why?
I can't say that ever again. Her being able to stretch this trope out over the course of 2 books instead of just having to do one.
Yeah.
In the first book, she meets someone who she thinks is her enemy, falls in love with him. He becomes her lover. But then in the second book, that man reverts from being her lover to her enemy, and then another guy that she thought was her enemy is actually her lover, and he's her lover in like a big way because they're like soulmates or whatever. So she initially thinks that Tamlin, her initial love interest and like husband or fiance or whatever, is evil. But this is because he's a member of the Fae, this like fairy species. And it's interesting, when I first read the book a long time ago, I didn't like it at all.
The first one?
Yeah. I still don't really like the first one. I like the second one because she gets depressed and I can resonate with that. But it's interesting. There's this thing that happens in Enemies to Lovers where, because this book really is, or these books really are about like wish fulfillment and the reader having a relationship like with the male love interest. that relationship between male love interest and reader is like protected over anything else, even above the reader's sympathy with the protagonist, which is my argument. So we're going to talk about it next week. This barrier that you were talking about within romance theory, it happens, the way in which it plays out in these romantasy books is kind of identical in every single one of these like heavy hitters, which is that the male love interest like betrays the protagonist because of some like noble cause, and for some reason she can't get over it, and like we as the readers are being like pushed into a place of being like, just forgive him already, like we love him, right?
Yeah.
And so it kind of the authors being unwilling to make these male love interests like actually evil to the point where we would understand why they're her enemy does kind of like really diminish our ability to sympathize with the protagonist, because at the beginning of the book, Farah is set up as being like, she's poor. All she wants to do is be able to provide for her family and paint. That's like her whole shit. She's like, I just want to be able to be free from the shackles of hunger and paint. And then this guy comes into her life and he's like, I'm a giant bear or whatever, and I'm a fairy, and I'm going to take you off to fairyland. I will provide for your family. Your family will be happy and healthy and well provided for, and you can come back and I will give you everything that you want so that you can like achieve your dream of painting. And so she like, within the course of the first half of the book, she is able to like actuate all of her goals, and yet she still is like, but fuck this guy, I fucking hate this guy, he's the fucking worst because he's a fairy, and we don't really understand why like fairies are evil. But anyway, that was all just to say that that is an instance of like prizing the relationship of the reader to the male love interest because we want sympathy, even if it makes the protagonist seem a little bit more unreasonable.
Totally. I had a thought and then it went away.
Okay.
It left my brain.
Okay.
Where'd it go?
I can talk about...
the first book.
The first book.
Yes. I feel like most people don't like the first book.
It's convoluted as fuck. The whole thing at the end where she's like, well, actually, you were supposed to kill and skin my friend, and it like broke the curse, and like it doesn't make any fucking sense to me.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, but once we get with Reese under the mountain, it actually does heat up a little bit.
It does. And I like it when she's depressed.
Yeah. But yeah, most people I know anecdotally are like, because I think I stopped reading the first book.
Yeah, me too.
And then people were like, oh no, like you gotta just like kind of power through that one, and then once you get to the second one it gets good. And that's very accurate. But yeah, it's really just Beauty and the Beast.
Literally.
It's Beauty and the Beast.
Did you know that Beauty and the Beast was initially like a fable that was told to girls to like prepare them for arranged marriages? Because they're like, yeah, he might be like disgusting and like you might have to marry him, but like maybe you'll come to love him.
Wow.
Isn't that horrible?
That's real bummer. Most of those stories are just like, their original source texts are kind of rough. Like, do you know the Little Mermaid one?
I read the Grimm's fairy tale, but I don't really remember it.
I think at the end of the Little Mermaid, he ends up with the other woman, and she's so sad that she turns into sea foam.
I remember the thing about sea foam.
She turns back into sea foam. So
she just like...
If you don't got the man...
She pulls a Padme and like willingly just dies.
Yeah. Anakin, you're breaking my heart. Love that you're making Star Wars references. I know. I'm now, receiving my Star Wars education. I'm so proud of you. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it is weird that these books go that direction with the sort of like lover becomes enemy and they switch, because none of the other ones do that. And I wonder if there's anything to read into that beyond her just trying to stretch out, to use your phrase, not your first phrase, use your second phrase, to stretch out the like moment of them actually getting together. Ooh,
I remembered I wanted to ask you, there was something that you wrote about in our paper about how in traditional romances, and tell me if I'm just pulling this out of my ass, like the book ends when the characters like
get married,
get together or get married. Yeah. And so I was thinking about, because I was watching Pride and Prejudice and I was thinking about that, how it was in the Regency period, which like predated the Victorian era, and how like in Austen's books, they always, as soon as the main characters like basically got engaged, I don't really know if we ever saw many of them actually get married, but as soon as they like established a connection.
Yeah, I think that's usually engagement.
Yeah, there was like a brief epilogue where she talks about like Elizabeth and Darcy or whatever, but it's just like them coming together, deciding to be together is the entirety of the plot. And then this like perfect, idyllic, happy future is just like accepted and understood and like whatever.
Yeah.
Even though like Mr. Bennet and Mrs. Bennet have a horrible marriage, so we like understand that, and also like Charlotte and Mrs. Collins,
Mr. Collins,
Mrs. Collins.
Yeah.
But then in the Victorian era, they started getting into like the books stretching on after the marriage. Did you read Middlemarch? So fucking good. You actually like really, really, and there's an amazing miniseries. I can't believe,
like, well, I guess I've read Daniel Deronda now.
Daniel Deronda sucks.
And the Veil, it's a like novella, I guess we'd say, maybe a short story. The Painted Veil, it's great.
The Painted Veil,
and I've read Romola, so I've read like
I haven't read those.
Her least accessible novels, and that's it.
But I was just gonna say that in Middlemarch, it like, and I won't spoil it for you because I really want you to read it.
Gets into the messiness after the marriage.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and the fact that the romance ends in marriage is one of the reasons why people critique it for being anti-feminist, because like marriage is the goal, and once that goal has been achieved, we're done here. Our work is finished. We don't give a
fuck about the rest of your story.
Right. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
But the theorist that I'm pulling all the romantasy theory from, or romance theory from today, Pamela Regis, she is pushing back on that because of how much she argues that the barrier is like the point of the plot. She's like, the book isn't about the marriage. The book is about overcoming the challenges. And like, yeah, that's the end goal, but like, that's not actually the substance and like where the aboutness of the story is. I see both sides.
So we go on to the barrier?
Yeah. Yeah. So Pamela Regis, just a little bit about her. The book I'm pulling this from is A Natural History of the Romance Novel from 2013.
Wait, is this Theory Corner?
This is Theory Corner.
Welcome to Theory Corner.
Welcome to Theory Corner. Ugh, love Theory Corner. I can't wait to hear the jingle. She outlines 8 essential elements of the romance novel. And one of them is, I don't know if the word is matrimony, but like that step that you talked about where it doesn't have to be like literal marriage, but like we have decided we are together. But one of them that she talks about is society defined. And in romance novels, like there's an early moment of definition for the reader that reveals how the society is like flawed or corrupt or somehow oppressive to the heroine or the hero. And the flaws of the society are like a significant obstacle to the couple getting together. And their union stands as like sort of an implicit victory over, or sometimes even improvement of society. And so, yeah, that's one way that Regis counters the criticism of the genre as anti-feminist. Like we talked about last week, is that the romance genre focuses on women's concerns and desires, and the women's desire position her in opposition to society, not simply like in subjugation to it, which we get a little bit in Thorns and Roses. Like you talked about how like the human world is shown as incomplete or oppressive because like there's a lot of poverty and she's struggling to feed her family, and then Tamlin like becoming domineering and controlling is kind of a stand-in for like the larger patriarchal society in the Fae world. And then the barrier is like really tied to the flawed society because like the conflict and like reasons why the protagonists can't get together is usually like something wrong with society. It doesn't have to be like the barrier can be like some internal thing that has to be overcome. But it's usually tied to the flaws of society. But the barrier is like kind of like a sneaky way for the writers to explore and critique like socio-political concerns within the romance narrative. And Regis argues like that the barrier is the source of the women's oppression, so that in, quote, overcoming the barrier, the heroine moves from a state of bondage or constraint to a state of freedom. So she's arguing that it's like pretty hardcore, like liberatory for women, even though it like ends in marriage. She thinks like because the barrier is like tied to social oppression somehow, even if it's just like sneakily, implicitly, subtextually, don't know if that's a word, by overcoming it, she's like defeating the ills of society and like claiming freedom.
So if we were to translate this onto a classic like Pride and Prejudice, would you say that the barrier is Elizabeth's like relative like poverty and lack of connections, or to Darcy, or would the barrier be like his own prejudice?
Probably
towards her?
him viewing. Yeah, probably. Well, because they both suffer from pride and they both suffer from prejudice. But a lot of his issues with her is because of her lower class. And yeah, him overcoming like caring about that as much as he does.
So the barrier being his classism and the liberatory element of him overcoming it. And I guess that liberatory element is always going to be like in context with the period of the time, because like Jane Austen herself like was able to subvert the like having to get married in order to like do anything with your life, because she was a writer, but she was like one of very, very few who were able to do that, again, in like this gentry and aristocracy, not like because women of the lower classes were always working. But I mean, if we look at the example of Charlotte Lucas, she like understands that marriage is like an economic construct, and she's like willing to do whatever it takes, and like truly whatever with Mr. Collins in order to achieve like the type of freedom that she is able to find, which again is very small. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess Elizabeth and Darcy, they like sort of achieve like a sort of class blindness, because she's prejudiced against him in part because of class too, like thinking that he's prideful and snobby and all these things because of he's like got so much money and blah blah blah. But yeah, it's like they're living in a class-free society of two at the end.
Have you heard those like modern analyses of trying to diagnose Darcy as autistic?
No. But I see it. Yeah. Totally see it. And so another essential element of the romance novel is like the moment of recognition, which is like an essential moment for overcoming the barrier. And it's a scene or scenes, multiple scenes, where the author represents like the new information that will overcome the barrier. So it could be like, if it's an internal barrier, it could be a moment of self-recognition. And that plays out like pretty literally in ACOTAR several times, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah. Because it's all basically her own internal... I just got really lightheaded from the vapes. I forgot what I was talking about. Yeah, it's like it does always seem to be her own internal prejudice against first the fairies and then against the Night Court.
Well, but even like the moment of recognition, like there are so many recognitions happening in Court of Thorns and Roses and in Pride and Prejudice too. Like the moment when she reads the letter after his first proposal, and which, sidebar, my favorite high school English teacher, Gonzo. Hoping you're good, Gonzo. I love this woman so much. But she had like this thing where she was like, I can't remember the chapter number. I think it's 20 something. But the chapter when Darcy proposes, you like have to read it in a bathtub. And she would give us extra credit for like taking a picture with the book in the back, obviously fully clothed and everything. So just like a bunch of pictures of like students just completely like in like jeans and a t-shirt just sitting in the bathtub with the book.
That is so
give us like
funny.
An extra credit point. It's so true though.
That is so true.
You have to read it. But like, yeah, reading the letter and then being like, oh
shit.
Like, I have learned new information about Darcy that changes the way I see him. And then it keeps happening. Like, oh, he saved Lydia. Like, I see him differently. And for Farah, it's like, oh, Reese is okay. Oh, Tamlin's not okay. Oh, Reese is my mate. Like, all of those are, oh, I'm okay with Reese being my mate. All of those are like recognition scenes that are like overcoming the barrier.
So one of my main arguments that I've been trying to make in our collaborative research is trying to create like a psychic analogy between the way in which Romantasy operates in terms of like gendered power dynamics and the ways in which kink and BDSM play out IRL. Do you know that one?
In real
Hell
life. Yeah. Nailed it.
I don't know. I feel like I can say I used to be a TikToker because I hate doing it and I haven't done it in a long time. But like 6 months ago, I was on a kick and I was making a lot of TikToks and talking about this stuff where I was like, I was just starting to think about the Romantasy stuff and I was like having some ideas and I would throw them out there and I'd be like, what do you guys think? And then they would be very mean. But the first one that I made was about talking about some of the stuff that we talked about last week, which was like wish fulfillment in books that are like primarily catered to men, which is often about like having supernatural powers like heroism, bonding with other men, etc. And then in these like romance books, which are, I think it's like 93% read by women, the wish fulfillment is these relationships that are outside the bounds of patriarchal power structures. And so I talked about that, and I guess I didn't articulate well like what I meant by outside the bounds of patriarchal power structures, because I got a lot of people disagreeing, saying there was one quote, one comment that I'm reading verbatim that said, the escapist fantasy of being in an abusive relationship with a werewolf, vampire, billionaire, pirate. And I was like, okay, well, excellent feedback. Let's go back. So I'm going to be trying to explain or like define more what I mean of like how these things operate outside the realms of like patriarchal power structures as we know them in our own world. So to start off, kink, BDSM, bondage, domination, sadomasochism. We have done more research on this, but just to give like a brief overview, it can be seen as fear of being transmuted to pleasure by the elements of protected, consented fantasy. And so I saw this comedy special by Jenny Slate many a year ago, and this particular part of it stuck with me, and so I'm going to play it into the microphone.
Nice.
Okay. Let's see.
And then I was like, well, maybe I could like dip into some of my like disgusting fantasies. Like my boss that needs to take a lot of Lipitor is like, hey, Slate, get in here and sit on my dick, otherwise you're fired. And then I would like turn on the news and it was like, another boss said sit on my dick or you're fired. And I was like,
so I love Jenny Slate.
She's just the best.
I think that she's the best, and I think separately she's like one of the most beautiful women to ever live.
She's wonderful.
So she was talking about in that clip trying to her like uncomfortable attempt to reconnect with her own sexuality after a divorce that coincided with the rise of the Me Too movement. And so just like as a quick disclaimer of like using a comedy special as like a cited source within this, I talked to our colleague Andrew, who's a humorist, and he told me about humor relief theory, which is like one of the main theories of humor. And relief theory suggests that humor is a mechanism for pent-up emotions or tension through emotional relief. In this theory, laughter serves as a homeostatic mechanism by which psychological stress is reduced. Humor may thus facilitate ease of the tension caused by one's fears. So in this case, humor relief theory can be applied by making jokes about things that are scary to you is a way in which to release those fears, right? In this way that we talk about with Jenny Slate, she's talking about this like fantasy that she would have that like in the privacy of her own imagination could be like sexually gratifying for her. But when that fantasy is dragged out into daylight and transformed from theoretical to something that is substantively dangerous, that gratification, in her own words, gave way to revulsion. But it is also possible for this transformation to be processed backwards, which is how kink comes into it, where fear and disgust may shift into satisfaction. So when we're talking about kink, there's a lot of data on the fact that kink can be, like engaging in kink practices and BDSM can be helpful in the healing of trauma, not limited to, but including sexual trauma. So this is from a paper by Spizica and Reese, where they talk about BDSM is typically understood as an erotic/sexual practice involving the infliction or receiving of pain, be it physical or psychological, for the purposes of sexual gratification. And so it is important to note that while BDSM scenes or play may include elements of or akin to bodily restraint, torture, or consensual non-consent, otherwise known as play, there are principles such as SSC, safe, sane, and consensual, or RAC, risk-aware consensual kink, that are touted as being foundational to BDSM today. And along with tools of consent such as safe words, it represents sadomasochism's distinctiveness from the violence that it often, at the level of basic practice, emulates. While stereotypical cultural conceptions of BDSM practitioners have been frequently pathologized as those suffering from mental illness or abuse, or designated BDSM play as re-traumatizing, there is a breadth of contemporary research that has shown promising evidence of participation in these safe, sane, and consensual BDSM play in helping practitioners heal from sexual trauma. Corey Hammers writes in the book Reworking Trauma Through BDSM that these reenactments of lived trauma are performative scenes of consensual violence where the critical role of fantasy is front and center. This is a reworking or working out of trauma as S&M transfigures the unbearable suffering of violence, sexual and or gender trauma, into something more bearable.
Gut reaction to that is that seems like a terrible idea.
Yeah.
As like a therapeutic practice.
Yeah.
Although I know with like phobias, sometimes like exposure therapy is a thing, but my guess would be that it's more like exploring stuff like control and like dominance and submissiveness in like a like safe environment is like kind of healing and like transforming those like feelings into something like more pleasurable rather than like you might associate submissiveness with the bad experience, but then if you like change the association to one of pleasure, I'm wondering if it's like more loose, but just like the word reenactment of lived trauma, I'm like, how literal is the reenactment?
Yeah.
Or is it more just like of a loose kind of thing?
I do know and have read about people who, you know, have trauma from being like sexually assaulted in the past that do find gratification from engaging in like rape play. And so, and yeah, it is, right? It feels like an element of cognitive dissonance, right? You're like, why would you want to like willingly relive that trauma? But to borrow that language of Spizica and Reese again, so while BDSM may emulate acts that outside of context mirror facets of gender-based sexual violence, the creation or recreation of these acts in a safe, consensual, supportive environment that foregrounds pleasure, which they call the meaning-making process surrounding consent, may provide therapeutic benefits. So BDSM play is a holistic experience that does not end with the conclusion of the scene, because a necessary aspect of safe and consensual play is aftercare. So aftercare is part of the negotiation process. It is a physical and emotional caretaking that immediately commences at the conclusion of an S&M scene. So this is the mechanism through which people do throw around the term like re-traumatization, and I'm sure that like this was a big thing that was talked about when like 50 Shades of Grey came out, that people were like, this is not like a good representation of like what the BDSM community is.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And again, that book started as a fan fiction. I don't necessarily think that every book like has to be a perfect representation of like the like physical or moral rules of whatever environment that they're coming at it from, because again, they're like, it is just a story, and there are a lot of people out there who like do BDSM, but they do it in a way that is like not safe, sane, and consensual, and it like actually can be re-traumatizing. But if you, let's say, are dealing with sexual trauma, you like emulate that kind of scenario in a space where you know that you are safe, where you are being cared for, and then afterwards you have both like physical and emotional caretaking that can help your brain to like recontextualize those traumatic memories and reassociate them with an environment in which you felt more safe. So again, this is also like, this is pretty new research. This is from 2019, but this is like, this is something that a lot of people within the community like talk about as one of the positives of engaging in kink. So we talked about from the Jenny Slate clip, sexual fantasies can turn to disgust when transferred from the safe space of the imaginary into the real. Mm-hmm. So too may sexual trauma be transmuted when violent acts are emulated and recontextualized within a safe and supportive care environment. Okay, we have 5 more minutes. So we've established that across... Oh, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
No.
Okay.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Okay.
I'm digging it.
So... now that we've like made that kind of link, we're gonna try to put it into context with romantasy and how romantasy has been established anti-feminist. So across these decades of scholarships, the romance novels have been continually termed anti-feminist, at least in part for their reliance on inter-character power dynamics fed through patriarchal power structures. But romantasy, as we talked about last week, which is the melding of the fantasy of romance with the fantasy of world building, the genre was only defined in 2023, and yet it already has radically changed the publishing market. The market value of science fiction and fantasy books in the UK increased by 41% between 2023 and 2024, in a time where like people are not reading a lot. And also the driver of this change is a readership made almost entirely out of women. So according to the Romance Writers of America, between 82 and 90% of romance readers are women, and women in general constitute about 70% of fiction readers. Taking everything at face value, like looking at it not in a critical way, but just like as someone who's seeking information, if the novels in this genre, if we're going to take that theory at face value and say that the novels in this genre rest on the recitation of anti-feminist patriarchal power dynamics, why is it that they are so popular amongst the women readership?
Yeah, and just to jump in there, and we touched on this last week too, just about what a cultural phenomenon this is, like especially among women. Like those stats you just said, that's like huge. Both the 70% of fiction readers being women, that's wild, and the like 90% of romance readers are women. Well, okay, yeah. So there was an article last week, a New York Times article by Alexandra Alter about the publication of a book called Alchemize that's coming out in September by Senlin Yu, and that is the Dramini fan fiction novel that we were talking about last week. If the fan fiction was called Manacled, and now it's like been like de-Harry Potterized, and like she's changed some of the world building and stuff so that she's not, you know, infringing on the rules of such things.
Did you ever read The Love Hypothesis?
No, but I did put a hold on it on Libby, and I am eagerly waiting for that hold to be ready for me. I'm bummed that it's not romantasy though.
I know.
They're just scientists.
Yeah.
Like, where's the basilisk? Where's the basilisk?
Where's the Minotaur at the milk farm?
No, I don't want that. I don't want that. But that, you were just talking about the bestseller list. I think that that article said that 5 of the 10 best-selling adult fiction titles this year were Romantasy. That's crazy.
That is crazy.
That's so much. Last year, the Romantasy sales topped more than 32 million copies in print. And that's a 47% jump from the previous year. That is also just wild.
Yeah.
Absolutely wild.
So people are thirsty for the Romantasy.
They really are. Yeah. And so they're like going through, Manacled isn't even the only fan fiction to be picked up. There are like 2 other new novels coming out cited in that article. Yeah, there are 35,000, about roughly 35,000 Dramini stories on Archive of Our Own.
Holy shit.
That's so wild. And Manacled got 10 million views. Over 10 million. Those numbers,
I'm glad she's getting published. God damn.
Like, granted, we don't know numbers. As we learned last week. Trying to understand how the number 10 works.
We've had to jettison that from our brains.
Yeah, man. But like, even we can recognize that these numbers are insane. These are crazy numbers. Yeah. So like that question you ask, like, if novels in the genre are like anti-feminist and just like reinforcing the patriarchy, then why are women reading them? It's like a very pertinent question to the world we are living in right now. Rant over.
Oh, okay. So we're going to be talking about how, if we're creating this analogy between kink and romantasy, where in kink, again, traumatic experiences can be recontextualized due to its being a safe space where one is being cared for. We're going to talk about how, if we're going to create this analogy, how romantasy is a safe space for women to be experiencing patriarchal power dynamics, again, in a way that is not able to harm them. So, as we talked about through our discussion of BDSM and the quote from Jenny Slate, we can deduce that it is the fantasy of it that is key to the transmutation of pain to pleasure. So negative experiences derealized and turned to the fantastic may offer gratification, pleasure, catharsis, and healing. So in romantasy, what we just talked about, the fantastic is squared. The fantasy world, which sets the scene for the love fantasy. So romantasy can be called a safe space for the experiences of sexual and romantic fantasy, not only in its explicit ficticity, but in the acknowledged role of masculinity as a simulacrum. So that's the big point I'm going to be talking about next. Not only is the readership of romantasy almost universally female, about 93%, but on the list of, I just talked about this, of the 50 international best-selling romantasy novels, 100% of the authors were women. So the craft of these novels uses masculinity as a tool. Remember, it's when I was talking about like that it is the relationship between reader and love interest that is of the utmost importance, and we can see that in the craft. And yet from production to consumption, these texts are almost entirely divorced from male experience. The masculinity within our examined texts represents men as brutal, violent, and often jealous. Confronting these attributes of masculinity within real-world experience is often frightening, and yet when subsumed into fantasy, where, again, to quote Hammers, these reenactments of lived trauma and performative scenes of consensual violence where the critical role of fantasy is front and center, the realized fear may transform to pleasurable fantasy. So in this case, masculinity loses its threat when disconnected from corporeal men. And every time it's like, you have those words where like you know the definition in your head, but you like couldn't articulate it. Yeah. Okay, and what was it? It was like Disney World?
Disney World.
It's like
disillusionment.
The best like real world example of simulacrum. Jean Baudrillard talked about Disney World?
Yeah, I think we read that one.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah.
So to define simulacrum, which
that's funny. I was going to be like, Nina, simulacrum. Speak on that.
To like define what simulacrum means in this context, it's like an image or a representation of something else, not the thing itself. So one of the best examples of it is Disney World, how it's like a fake city. It's like, but it's not claiming to be a real city. And I just realized that Baudrillard wrote about Disney World, which is like crazy to me. When did Baudrillard write?
I want to say he was like the 50s.
Okay, Baudrillard argued that by presenting itself as a sanitized fantasy, Disneyland creates a diversion that conceals the broader transformation of real America into a state of hyperreality. Fuck, I want to read that.
You have read it, hypothetically. Baudrillard's the best.
And so I was going to talk about this like simulacrum of masculinity presented within this safe space being fictional,
right? That's like really like highlighting like this is fiction, this is fiction, this is fiction,
and it is a hyper real version of masculinity. I was going to talk about how that can provide catharsis.
Catharsis. We all know this word. We all use this word all the time. What in the literary context does that word mean? Turns out people cannot decide. I think they like kind of, there's like a theory that's like more front and center than others, that's pulled to the fore. It comes from Aristotle's Poetics, where it's spelled with a K. Greek. I don't know.
Greek.
That's how they roll. The line from the Poetics, and the only line, at least in like the parts of Poetics that I've read, is that thus tragedy is an imitation of an actor that is serious, yada yada yada, and affecting through pity and fear catharsis of such emotions. This is him like defining what tragedy is. And the affecting through pity and fear pretty much means like feeling for the characters. He doesn't mean like pity and fear necessarily in the senses of the words we would use them today. Yeah, so like I think that we typically think of catharsis as sort of like an emotional healing, right? Like sort of an agony, but that is like satisfying, mm-hmm. right? And in like the Renaissance time, people kind of like, according to one of our professors, took that to mean like a literal like purging. Like the actual like translation of catharsis is like cleansing, clarity, insight, and purging. And like, yeah, early modern like Renaissance misreadings of it thought that it was like that the play or art like whips you up into such an emotional frenzy that the conclusion and like catharsis of it was you like puking out all of those feelings, like literally like purging you of the emotions. And I think that's kind of how literary folks like think of catharsis right now, or it's kind of like the association we have of it.
Mm-hmm. That was me at Angels in America.
Right. But it's actually probably more like in terms of reaching an ethical or intellectual clarity rather than puking. Even if puking is what most people think of it, or most people in our world think of it as puking. Most people in the real world think of it as like healing and like satisfaction, and maybe like recognition too. But yeah, people misread it a little bit as puking. People often think of it as healing. And then like what it actually probably is, the leading theory right now, ritual that leads to forgiveness of sins and spiritual insight or clarity. So yeah, all of these things I think are like on the table as far as like what we can get out of catharsis. But yeah, I think kind of like a moment of like, aha, like I see that, I understand that, and like that moment of realization.
Love.
Thus ends Theory Corner on Catharsis.
Does catharsis need to be painful in his sense?
Well, Aristotle is talking about it in the context of tragedy, which, like, I don't know if, like, catharsis itself needs to be painful or just, like, the fact that it's a tragedy means that it will be. So I don't think he, like, teased out that question so much. But I probably, yeah, right?
Yeah.
I think so.
That's so interesting, especially in context.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
We're talking about pain in a more literal sense.
Yeah.
Which again is like sort of literalizing, signposting its ficticity, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is a fantasy, like an emotional romantic fantasy. We're going to literalize that it's a fantasy.
Yeah.
And like literalizing the pain too. Like, all of the BDSM stuff is so interesting, but like literalizing female pain, like in relationships via BDSM as like the subtext of all these books is interesting. And fear. Like,
yeah.
I think any woman with an ounce of sense, any heterosexual woman with an ounce of sense
With an ounce of sex.
any heterosexual woman with an ounce of sex entering into a potential tryst with a guy, there has to be an element of fear because of the world we live in. Like, it has to be there. So then, like, taking that fear and like blowing it up big and then like making it safe is so interesting.
So interesting.
It's so interesting.
Like these,
I love your theory.
I am just basking in you. I love Theory Corner. I love your big beautiful brain.
You love Theory Corner. It's not really my brain. It's just me taking other people's brains and then spitting them back out.
That's what we do.
That is what we do.
But it is just so interesting because like these books are about men who are like often quite literally monsters. Like
yes. Very, very,
vampires,
very
werewolves,
basilisks,
fucking
minotaurs,
whatever the hell,
Pegasi. No,
and
they're just pretty.
They're all killers. Like it didn't have to be this way.
Dragons. We got
dragons. We've got Zayden Ryerson with his like shadow shit where he like.
No, I was thinking about Zodiac Academy.
Oh well, it's like there was this one scene in Fourth Wing where some people are coming to like kill her or something because they're jealous, and then Zayden comes in and he uses his like shadow puppets to kill like 12 people, and then someone's like, how many did you kill? And he was like, I killed them all. And it's like, it's supposed to be sexy, but like these portrayals of men who are monsters and who are violent, it's like I obviously that's not what we're looking for in real life, but it is divorced from our understandings of what we're looking for.
It's interesting that in ACOTAR, do people actually say it like that?
ACOTAR? Yeah,
ACOTAR?
I think so.
Okay. Those sides of Reese are very performative. They're not super duper like his reality. Like the dark, scary, like hyper masculine.
Yeah.
Parts of Reese are like his front because of the silly plot convoluted reasons of like I must pretend to be evil to protect the Night Court,
protect something,
protect the name of that pretty town where it's all starry.
Valaris.
That sounds right.
Bro, ACOTAR books, they're those kinds of books that I read like not that long ago. You asked me, I could not tell you about the plot.
That happens to me too.
I feel like the plots are so convoluted that it just like exits my brain.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But that's interesting that he's not actually, I mean, I don't really remember his personality.
I mean, he does like, they all murder people all the time. They're like at war or whatever.
People.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also murder.
Yeah. There's always murder in these books.
Always murder. But it's weird that, like, Xaden is, like, violent macho man.
Yeah.
And, like, Rhys is pretending to be violent macho man. I don't remember how much he actually is that, but it's a weird, like, because ACOTAR was, like, one of the earlier ones. So I'm kind of wondering if she, like, Sarah, was like, I want to distance the character from these, like, I don't want him to be pure simulacrum. Like, I want him to, or maybe even more simulacrum, because, like, it's a book, and then the character in the book is I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. This
layers like an onion.
Yes. It's making my head hurt a little bit. But I wonder if she was, like, worried about him being overly masculinized in, like, a toxic masculinity way, so wanted to sort of, like, distance his character from it. And then we've progressed to a place now where, like, it's fine. Just, like, give us the men. Give us the manly men.
It's so funny also that, like, that Tamlin was such a bait and switch, because, like, another one of the things that I was looking at is how all of these men, the, like, male leads of these romances, they always look exactly the same. They're characterized to look exactly the same. So Tamlin
Xaden and Rhys are definitely, like, described almost the
exactly the same. Like, so Tamlin is, like, a pretty boy, and he's blonde.
Right.
Similarly
don't
to
throw shade at the blonde.
Why, as a man, are you blonde?
How dare you?
There's this thing that happens in both Fourth Wing and ACOTAR where the women have these, like, initial love interests that they then leave. With Violet in Fourth Wing, it's Dane, who's, like, brunette or blonde or whatever. And then with Feyre, it's Tamlin. And both of these men, like, at length show themselves to be, like, shitty or unworthy or backstabbing or violent in ways that are not the sexy kind of violence that these protagonists like. But so in Fourth Wing, ACOTAR, whatever the fucking Armentrout book is called that I can never remember, Blood and Ash. They're all, like, tall, black-haired, often
tall, dark,
like,
and handsome.
Often, like, vaguely not white, but in a way that's, like, not described. There was, like,
yeah, that's true. Like, Xaden's not white.
Okay, he's
a person of color, but it's not
explicit at all. So, like, there's also the thing with, like, the bisexual sidekick, which I'm not going to get into right now, but Violet has one of those. And then, like, her being black is, like, very clearly established.
Wait, who's black?
Her best friend.
Oh, I was like, Violet's black? I thought Violet was blonde. Man, I didn't read those books closely.
But then Xaden is described as, like, kind of, like, tan, and it's never acknowledged. But then the author apparently, like, on Twitter afterwards was like, I can't believe that everyone is, like, illustrating Xaden as white. Like, he's totally not white. And she put up, like, a meme from New Girl where Schmidt was like, a white man, whatever. I don't know. It's just interesting. Very off topic. And they all are hung to shit. So they all look exactly the same. And they all have this, like, tall, dark, and handsome shit.
It'd be interesting to explore the race thing more.
I think that we should.
Because, like, I don't think that the books, I mean, clearly I didn't read them very closely, but they don't say he's black.
Who?
Xaden.
I think he's supposed to be, like
why
Asian
make it so ambiguous is what I'm wondering.
I agree.
Yeah, what is that accomplishing or what is that avoiding?
Though patriarchal structures remain in place from reality to our fantasy worlds, women's relationships with and reactions to these structures alter radically between reality and fiction. So this is directly from our paper. Fantasy worlds do not need to be free from the violent socio-political ramifications of patriarchy in order to offer readers a sense of escapism. The derealization of the world due to its fictional nature divorces readers from the reality of such violence. Much as in Kink practices, fantastical derealization through fictional safe spaces can offer gratification along with catharsis, even while emulating anti-feminist structures. And then I think you were going to use that to talk about Mendelssohn.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Yeah, just like your thoughts right there made me think about a theory that Farah Mendelssohn, I think she's British, Don't hold me to that. Pretty sure she's British. She has a theory about how fantasy is a tool to like make the familiar strange. And that phrase, make the familiar strange, is something I'm borrowing from sociology, but it works here too. But you make the familiar strange in order to comprehend the familiar in like a strange new way. And I think like if we take that idea and we sort of like add to it or tweak it a little bit, it fits in really well with what you're saying. Because she's talking about fantasy more in terms of revealing through the genre realities of the real world that the reader doesn't know yet. So it's like providing a certain distance through the genre that helps you understand your own world differently. And I think that that idea of distance is really key with your brilliantness. I think that distance is really key with your analysis too, because it's like the horribly familiar is made safe in this strange new world. So I think that's just a really fun like way to fold in that idea, that theory, because we love Theory Corner.
Our shit works so perfectly together. I can't believe it.
It's just
amazing.
Beautiful. It's just beautiful stuff. I'm just reading it and I'm like reading your thoughts and then I'm like, oh, there's that one. That just goes right there. Perfect. And then I think we should also touch on like, we talked about escapism last week some, but I think it's worth folding a little bit of like what fantasy theorists have said about escapism into this as well. And I think like the heart of it is that escapism allows us to think that our actions have meaning and that we have control over our lives.
Shit.
Which is usually like a little bit poo-pooed and dismissed by scholars. And I don't know if that's more to do with them not loving the theory or if that's more to do with them not loving the texts that are being theorized about. But this is a great quote from Catherine Hume. She's a Romantasy theorist, and I mentioned her last week.
A Romantasy or romance?
Oh, sorry. No, fantasy.
Oh, okay, cool.
Thank you. Good catch. She's a fantasy theorist who I mentioned last week, who was talking about how fantasy and imitation aren't like separate genres, but are both like impulses that both happen in fiction rather than like distinct separate things. And so this is her quote about escapism. She says, quote, "Trashy though many adventures are," which like shots fired, Catherine, "they encourage belief in the possibility of meaningful action. They deny that the individual is worthless, a negligible statistic." And I always thought that just rang so true. Like, I actually personally love that theory of escapism, that it's like a counter to like existentialist dread that our lives are worthless and like pretty meaningless in the grand scheme of things. And like our actions don't really do anything to affect the world. But like in a fantasy, Frodo's decisions and like his actions literally are like the fate of the world is at stake.
Even the smallest person.
Exactly. And that's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
And that's just like, I think that like for a long time, for many years, I was like, why do these stories matter so much to my heart and my soul? And I think that's why, that like being a good person and making good choices actually fucking matters in these books in like big stakes ways.
That's amazing.
And that's great. Yeah. So I think in this context, that idea of escapism literature takes on a certain different meaning because it introduces back a certain like agency both for the reader and the character to like that idea of like control over the patriarchy, the men, society, the world, our lives, all of it. And then I just wanted to throw out another great quote from Hume before I close out Theory Corner. She says, "Those to whom the genre, as in fantasy, seems silly should ponder the reasons for the popularity of such fantasies. They point to the lack of fulfilling and satisfying values in everyday life. As Rosemary Jackson, sidebar, we will be talking about her in future pods, has argued, fantasy is, among other things, a form of subversion and protest. Even if the fantasy only offers escape, that desire to turn away is not necessarily contemptible. Readers who feel no lacks in their everyday lives are quick to scorn the means by which others gain satisfactions, but the scorn may be misdirected. Which also ties into what we're, right?
That's fucking awesome.
It's great. Catherine.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Catherine. Yeah, I mean, I can't say it better than that.
Hell yeah.
Go, Catherine.
I feel like that's a good place for us to stop.
I agree.
Okay.
We did it. We did it again. We've done it twice.
Thank you for coming to the airport.
To the F.
To the F. We will be back.
To the F, pod.
We will be back. School is starting soon. So
we
scared.
don't know when.
We don't know when we'll be back, but we will. And we will be talking about Fourth Wing.
Yes, we will.
Yes,
yeah, what are we talking about next time? I don't remember.
I was going to be talking about conflict. And you were talking about reality versus fiction.
Am I? Why did I say that? There was a reason.
And we will find out at some point. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.